Trustee Bolfus? Trustee Wagner?
Here.
Trustee Case?
Here.
Trustee Kazone?
Here.
Trustee Taglia?
Here.
President Bullwinkle.
Here. Okay, item number 2 on our workshop agenda for this evening is a budget presentation and discussion. We're going to go through a number of items tonight in regards to the capital projects fund. So with that, I'll toss it over to the Manager Keener, and we'll get this underway for you tonight.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. Yes, this evening's budget workshop, we'll be talking about our capital project funds, stormwater, water, sewer funds, and then the last item we'll talk about is the 5-year capital improvement plan. All this information is on our website. And so this evening, the first couple of items I wanted to do, Your Honor and Board, is to kind of clean up a couple of things.
Okay.
So we have our workshop tonight. Then we anticipate a public hearing on the budget at 7:15, and the first reading of the ordinance will be on April 10th.
Okay.
And then adoption of the budget on April 24th, and then we'll cruise right into May 1st using the new budget. And of course, our Director of Finance, Kevin, will make sure that the budget's on file, etc., during that late timeline. And then additionally, I'm not sure if folks happen to catch this, but Kevin and I, over the last few months, have been talking about a fiscal year change. So I wanted to bring that up this evening and to kind of just let everyone know that we were talking about it. So our fiscal year, so the folks at home understand, is it starts May 1st, ends April 30th. So staff is proposing to change the fiscal year to correspond with the calendar year. This will align our employee benefit years with the tax year and simplify communication, and further, capital projects and other big picture planning is simplified when working with a calendar year budget. So to do that, it takes a little planning. Director Wachtel has put together a proposed transition schedule, and this was distributed earlier, but the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget will be adopted as currently presented May 1st, 2017 through April 30th, 2018. But during next year's budget discussions, staff will present a 20-month spending plan. And so that will be May 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. It'll be a shorter budget year. And then January 1st, 2019 kicks off the new fiscal year, matching the calendar year. So that would be January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. And that'll be the first calendar year. We will still need to adopt budget ordinances for the budgets, an 8-month short year and a 12-month calendar year. And then it requires just small modifications to the village code, which can be done via ordinance. But many municipalities across the state of Illinois have already done this, and this will enable better planning and follow-up for, say, capital projects that usually span 2 fiscal years, and it's kind of hard to close out the fiscal year and then with the project still going on. So hopefully we switch to a calendar year, this will all flow much better and be able to be tracked better and audited better. So with that, Your Honor, I'd like to pass it over to Director Juskelis, our Director of Engineering and Public Works, and to kind of take us through our funds this evening.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try and move as quickly as possible. I do have many slides, but they will be posted on the website. So if I skip over any of the slides, it's not that I don't want to talk about them. It's just that that information is there more for your reading than for me talking about it. So let's jump right in.
I'm sorry, can we cut just one of the lights so it's a little darker on the screen, be easier for us to see, and also the people at home
How's that?
too? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. That's okay.
Okay,
everybody?
starting with the Street Improvement Fund. We did complete our second year of voter-approved bond referendum projects. We did complete a total of over 33 miles of streets in 16-17. Now that does include almost 4 miles of rehabilitation and 29 miles of maintenance projects. So we touched about 45% of our streets this year in some manner. So it was a fairly busy year. Total expenditures, $5.44 million, of which $3.25 million of that was bond referendum funds. So far, year-to-date, since the referendum was approved, we spent $6.68 million of the $23 million in bond issues. So we're well on our way, and looks like we're on track to be able to do all the projects with the bond issue funds, and possibly even have some left over. But we don't want to commit those yet, because all it takes is 1 or 2 price increases over the next 3 years, and those will be gone. So we're cautiously optimistic that our bond referendums will have a little bit of surplus at the end of the program. Okay, this past year in particular, 2016 street improvement project, Park Boulevard, North Princeton, those were all major projects that were completed. High Ridge Road, as you know, that needs some additional work. We are going to go back and get that fixed. We are negotiating with the contractor, and we hope to have a solution to bring back to the board fairly quickly. Our ongoing maintenance activities, a lot of which are joint bid. We're continuing to use the joint bid process wherever possible for patching and crack sealing, and then, of course, our annual asphalt rejuvenation program. So, and you see all the mileages there. And of course, every year we have to design the projects that are to be completed the following year. Summary of just the rehab work, that's the major work. 12 different streets, 42 different blocks, almost 4 miles. Total referendum funds, $3.2 million. Total street fund expenditures, about $5.4 million. So again, fairly busy year in FY 16-17. This coming proposed fiscal year, we're looking at about 5.5 miles. So again, it's a fairly ambitious schedule. We're going to have the 2017 street improvement program. The Michigan Park to Madison project is going to start basically as soon as the snow melts, and then it'll carry over in the next year. And that's one of the projects that manager referenced that carry over from one fiscal year to the other. Central Boulevard's out to bid. Astor Court Myrtle will be going out to bid in the next few months. And you see other projects that are in various stages of design. Washington Ridge Road, Michigan Madison Dickey Jackson, and the College Streets. Design for next year's projects, FY18, still is kind of in flux because we do have some unresolved issues regarding funding. And once those issues are resolved next month, then we'll know how to package those design contracts going forward. Some of the projects that are not being funded with bond revenues include Summit, College Streets, the corrective work on High Ridge. Roosevelt Road, they're adding right turn lanes at Ardmore by IDOT. That contract was just awarded by IDOT just about a week ago. And I mentioned 2 engineering projects, Summit and St. Charles Road, because we are actually getting federal funding for design of these projects, which is a fairly rare event. Usually the federal dollars are for construction only, but we were able to secure some grant funding for design as well, or phase 3 in this case.
In hand now, right? Or no?
Which
For the
one?
Madison to Roosevelt grant?
The Summit Madison Roosevelt,
Right.
yes, yes, that's a
Okay,
grant-funded
we don't have
project.
to worry about that getting hung up. You
No,
know.
no, that's federal money, that's committed.
Yeah.
We have a local agency agreement with IDOT in place,
That's
committing
all.
the
We
federal
don't have to worry
funds.
about that. Okay, good.
Talking about that summit, in the budget, there was a line item for, I think it was $720,000 for that. Is that the grant money, or is that outlay that we have to come up with?
The expense will be the total project, and then the federal share will show up in revenue. So we don't budget the net, we have to budget the gross. But when we expense it, obviously, in this case, IDOT just charges us back for our share because they're letting the project. So we won't see bills for the entire amount. It's not a reimbursement in these cases. Some grants are reimbursements, but for highway projects, it's not. We only get billed for our share of construction. For engineering, we pay up front, and then we get reimbursement for any grant-eligible portion of engineering.
Thank you.
Okay, summary. Oh, did I skip this? Hold on, let me back up here. Okay. We went through that one. This is just a listing of the projects in detail. what's in the 2017 and what's in the other projects. I won't read them. You could look at them on the website, but this just gives you an idea what the projects are and a map of the proposed projects. There is a blow-up of the 5-year capital improvement here in the room. You could look at that afterwards. And the maintenance projects, as we talked about, were on an annual basis. We do some patching, crack filling, rejuvenation. We do have 2 parking lot rehabs proposed in the budget this year, one for a portion of the South Fire Station and the other for a portion of the golf course parking lot. So anybody that golfs knows that that parking lot is in pretty bad shape.
And speaking of, I'm sorry, speaking of parking lots, the Metra station parking lot, I know we put some asphalt down, what, about 8 months ago or so, but there's still some pretty big holes in the asphalt, so I'm just wondering if there's any plans to fix that. I've had some inquiries from the residents, and I've driven through there and
We
seen
can patch it in-house, or when we do our patching contract, we can include some quantities, because our patching contract's typically flexible. We go around and identify areas that need patching, so if there's some patching that needs to be done, we can include it very easily.
Yeah, in the lot,
And
yeah.
I think Jeremy's already making note of that.
Yeah. Could we saw cut that
Yes,
piece
typically
out instead
when
of
you-
just throwing the,
No,
the
when you do a
whole
patching
patch?
contract, it is with saw
Okay,
cut.
good,
It's a
okay.
permanent patch.
Okay, thank you.
70 yards long, isn't it?
Yeah.
The other item on this slide I want to mention is the North Avenue Townhome Frontage Road. Because the special service area did not go forward, all we're planning on doing is to restripe it and reconfigure the existing parking based on a drawing provided to us by IDOT some months ago. Okay, that's it for the Street Improvement Fund. I'm going to move on to the other capital projects fund unless anybody has questions on road improvements.
Anybody?
Okay, hearing none?
Everybody
I
good?
do have just
Yes, sir.
a clarification, just so I understand, going back to the South Michigan, Madison to Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Partial means,
Partial means it's going to be spread over 2 fiscal years.
okay,
Half in FY 17-18, half in FY 18-19.
right, okay.
So the reason for that is again, the financing for the storm sewer, and then we have to design the outlet for the Jackson Pond, which was in progress. So if the financing gets defined sooner, we can start sooner. The design will actually be done sometime this summer.
Okay.
So if everything else falls into place, we can get it out to bid sooner. But the financing is what's going to drive the timetable for that project, probably.
Thank you.
Trustee Case had a question too.
Yes, sir.
That North Avenue striping, is that on that frontage road?
Yes, sir.
Do we, is that part of the village, that frontage road?
The frontage road does belong to the village.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
It is IDOT right-of-way, but there was a jurisdictional transfer, I think, back in the 70s.
Yeah, I got that confused how that, I thought it was IDOT, and then I thought we owned it, I was just,
Manager can shed a little more light on that too. It's been a topic of conversation, for sure.
It has been a topic of conversation, and during the period prior to the SSA being proposed, we met with area residents, and one of their complaints was the frontage road. One, that IDOT, when they plowed North Avenue, the snow flew over the guardrail and onto their vehicles because they parallel parked next to the guardrail. Secondly, the village was unable to sweep the frontage road because of all the vehicles. So staff and President Bullwinkle and some of the residents of North Avenue Townhomes met with IDOT. So IDOT drew, if you will, the diagonal parking, and we'll implement that diagonal parking this summer. And so we'll be able to sweep as a result of that, and we'll be able to plow as a result of that. But also as a result of that, I think they'll lose approximately 8 parking spaces, because when we switch to diagonal, there's 74 spaces. However, some of those vehicles were illegally parked in the east and the west because they would park in the ingress and egress areas, and we'll have to make sure that that's painted yellow and has tow signs so that we can get in and out with the emergency vehicles. And that was the whole idea. So thank you, Ron.
I think you have
one more question.
Yeah, yeah.
Since you're talking about towing, I don't know if Officer, Deputy Chief Lake, how long does it take a car to get towed once it's got a sticker on it?
Sure. Come on up.
All depends on whose it is.
Right.
Yeah, it all depends on the process that it goes through when they try to notify the owner, sending letters, and then going through and get the title before we can actually remove them.
Okay,
So it varies.
all right.
Yeah. No. Oh, okay.
No,
All right. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, moving on to the 4 capital projects funds. I'll talk about revenue for the funds because it's pretty much in common. None of these funds have a dedicated or reliable source of revenue. They primarily rely on transfers from the corporate funds. So as you heard the other day when Kevin Wachtel made his budget presentation, that the budget does include transfers to fund some of these capital initiatives. Other than that, we do get grants for various purposes in the funds. In the case of equipment replacement, we do use sale of vehicles and lease purchase financing. And in the case of Fund 64, we do have a 50-50 program where there is cost sharing with residents on projects. So those are your primary sources of revenue for all those funds. Starting with Fund 64, we're in the closing stages of our North Side Sidewalk project. That will be completed once the weather breaks. And we did receive nearly $1 million in federal aid towards that project for the streetscape. Other than that, we have our normal sidewalk replacement program, which is a 50-50 cost-sharing program that we do every year. And the one new item is we were told about a year ago that all municipalities need to update their ADA compliance plan, which ours was probably 25, 30 years old. It went back to when ADA was first put into place. You know, back then we went through the entire village and installed the handicap ramps. Well, the standards have changed since then. Now they have the detectable warnings. So we had to update our inventory, come up with a new plan. So we're going to budget on a yearly basis some additional funds when they're available to start bringing all the ramps up to the new standards. And also now, whenever you do any type of federally funded project, even if it's just a resurfacing project, you have to include redoing all the ADA ramps as part of the project. So that's one of the reasons why all our road project costs have gone up, because we have to do that work. Even if you're not touching the sidewalk, you still have to do the ramps as part of a road project. So that's something to keep in mind going forward.
Are there any grants available to help offset the cost for the ADA?
Well, if it's
improvements?
part of a road project that's federally funded, it's an eligible item.
Yeah.
So standalone, I haven't really run across anything, but if it's part of a grant project, then those items are generally eligible as well.
Okay. All right. That'll help. Oh, Trustee Case
Can I
has a
ask
question.
one dumb
Sure.
question?
Come on in.
When we get grant money, is the contractor aware of what we have or no?
Absolutely.
They are.
They have to be, because they have to meet certain requirements for us to get the grant. You know, they have to provide certified payrolls. They have to provide certain documentation to the grant entity. So they're absolutely aware. I don't know if that has an impact on the unit prices, but generally it does, I guess, preclude unknowledgeable contractors from bidding on those type of projects. If you're not familiar with the grant process, you may be scared by bidding on a certain type of project.
Either you could lose or you could make it. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the Equipment Replacement Fund. One change, as suggested by the Finance Director, was to consolidate all our lease purchase costs into a separate line item, separate from the capital. And so we have done that yet. So this year there's going to be 3 leases in our lease purchase line item. We are proposing the replacement of 10 vehicles. As you may know, there were several years where there was little or no vehicle replacement. Our fleet is aging, so we are pretty much in a catch-up mode. So we are going to try and attempt to put a dent in the backlog, as they would say, this year, and trying to replace some of the vehicles. We are going to continue to pay into the fire truck reserve, and I believe at the end of the fiscal year, when the reserve has enough for the purchase of another fire truck, that's when they would actually place the order for a new fire truck. You know, Andrew wants to add any details on that.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, Manager Keener would like to add a few words.
Yes, thank you. And as most of you know, staff and I meet weekly and we talk about many different things. So Chief Ron and I have talked about the ordering of a new fire truck. But before we can do that, I've asked Ron to assemble a committee of his firefighters, and they can talk through what they would like to see on the new fire engine apparatus and things of that nature, just as we did for the new fire engine that we received the grant for. And the plan is that later in the fiscal year, we'll have $250,000 that we'll put down as a down payment when it's ordered to reduce the cost. And then it takes probably about 8 or 9 months to manufacture the fire engine. So by the time that comes in, it's more than likely in the following fiscal year. And so that's our plan, to purchase another first-line fire engine, and that will give us 2 new fire engines, 2 new ambulances for both firehouses, and we should be looking pretty good in the fire department after that. So thank you, Ron.
In regards to the fire engine that's going to be replaced, what will we do with that? Is it good enough to keep in a reserve situation for us, or will we do what we did with the previous fire engine by donating it to the University of Illinois down in Champaign?
That's a very good
Or
question.
something like that.
The vehicle that's a first-line vehicle now will become a reserve engine at that time. And then we'll take a look at the other engine that's reserved now and determine if we need to retain that or we can gift that and make room in the firehouse.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you.
Okay, also included in the equipment replacement fund is the replacement of miscellaneous capital equipment that is non-rolling stock. Several years ago, what we did was consolidate all the capital purchases that were scattered throughout the budget in various departments and put them all in one place. So we are continuing that process this year. Just some of the highlights of some of the proposed items: the phone system, which we just talked about last board meeting. The bulk of that will be, if not all the expenses, will occur in the next fiscal year. Completion of payments for recreation and permitting software. Some mobile data terminals for the fire department, which I understand are near end of life. Finish off our purchase of holiday decorations. We've been purchasing a few each year, and I think it's the snowmen that are finally going to disappear.
That's correct.
We've had them forever.
It is the
time.
snowman in St. Charles will be
Yeah.
retired.
We may donate
Aw.
one to the museum, because I do believe they've
Yes.
been around for a very long time.
Yeah, that actually would be great. Yeah.
And then, of course, some various small equipment for the different departments. Moving on to the building improvement fund, we'll have money allocated again for, I want to say, minor improvements to the swimming pool. It's mainly equipment and buildings, and it's not really the pools themselves, I do not believe. I think it's $50,000, so that's not going to take you towards replacing the pool, but it's more for the amenities and for miscellaneous pumps and things that break down. Overhead doors for the fire station, some various repairs to the Public Works building. We have a stack that leaks gas, and during certain days our customers complain that the whole building smells of gas, so we're trying to take care of that. Boiler pump at the Iowa Community Center, and some improvements for ice rinks.
In regards to the building repairs, the fire station on Ardmore, they have had some issues with their building itself in terms of just needing some repairs. So will we be doing anything with that?
Yes, the fire station overhead doors, that's Fire Station 81 on Ardmore. And over the last probably maybe 18 months, we've had issues with those doors giving way and actually landing on a vehicle. And they're very inefficient. They're very large doors, the original doors, so when they're open, it's a huge loss of heat. So the plan is to replace the doors with smaller doors and kind of and fill in and make it a smaller like garage type with some windows, be energy efficient and less weight because they are very heavy. There has been other improvements this year to the fire station. We're taking a look at windows for next year, taking a look at the concrete aprons for this coming year. Both north and south side aprons are cracking due to the weight of the fire trucks. So we're taking a look at one side, I believe, this year, and possibly the opposite side next year. They did redo some things inside the firehouse this year, made significant improvements to the bunk area and things of that nature to make it more livable, and they did that in-house. That was not hired out. So.
And how about the walls themselves? There's been, I guess, there's some cracks or, just some integrity issues with the building. It's not going to come down, but I know that maybe there might be some need there. That came up a few years ago even.
Yeah, the integrity, the building, I believe, is fully functional. There's no risk of closing the fire department. So
No.
that's something that we can certainly look at that is not on this year's agenda to repair any cracks in the foundation.
Okay, thank you.
Any question? All right. Moving on to stormwater. The reason I separated this fund out because it does now have its own separate funding source. We did pass a $6 fixed fee, which generates about $576,000 annually, which will help fund future projects in this fund. But as you can see, it's more or less a start. I can't put it any other way. When you look at the needs compared to the revenue, every little bit helps, but we do have a lot of needs in the stormwater fund. So there are some corporate transfers proposed, mainly because there's a current negative fund balance in the stormwater fund, so we wanted to at least get it to a zero going forward so that we're not starting out the year just paying off negative fund balance where we can use the new revenue for actual projects. There are some grants that we're going to be getting for stormwater. There is the Drainage Assistance Program, which is a cost-sharing program. And even though it's become less and less, we do occasionally still get developers that would rather pay a fee rather than providing stormwater detention where appropriate, where it does not cause any harm to do so. So some of our projects are Washington and Grant Street projects, which we are getting $1 million in CDBG-DR's Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. And those agreements are in place. That project should be going to bid, I'm saying, within the next 60 days, and within the next 30 days we do plan to have a public information meeting on that project. Jackson Pond, that's another project that will be getting, I would say, seed money, because it's about a $6 to $7 million project, but we are getting $550,000 grant funding towards that. The design engineer just came back to us with 4 alternates that we have to review and discuss with Jackson Junior High School, because it does involve redoing the ball fields and using some of the spoil from the pond to redo the ball fields to save haul-off costs. So depending on what we can work out with the high school, then we'll have a better idea what that project's going to cost. Michigan, Madison to Jackson, as was asked before, there is a relief storm sewer there that will connect to the future Jackson Pond, and so that funding has to be determined, because that project by itself will be probably $500,000 just for the storm sewer. Astor Court and Myrtle, that's one of our hardest hit areas. There is a stormwater component to that. It's primarily combined sewer separation, but along with that is some additional storage to increase the level of protection, and that one we're hoping to get out to bid in the fall. And then finally, our EPA-approved IGIG grant, which is to put in basically rain gardens in Monterey, has come back to life. EPA, after a 3-year hiatus, has contacted us asking us if we still want to do the project. So we're looking at that, and if we do decide to go forward, and I think we will, we'll be bringing a new agreement back to the village board for consideration. Ongoing operations in the stormwater. We do expect FEMA to release new floodplain maps. We were told unofficially to expect something in June, and then the 18-month process will start over again, the comment process and the review of the maps. They have not shown us the new maps yet. So they're waiting for approval. I don't know if it's the state or FEMA before they'll release it to the community. So we're checking back constantly, but so far we have not seen anything new.
And they're not taking any more comments from the public in that.
Well, in
Area
June, it's going to
affected.
start over again. So
Yeah,
you could
so they will
resubmit the
then.
comments, or you could resubmit new comments, but we're waiting to see what the new maps look like before we can comment.
Okay, yeah, and then we'll reach out to the residents in that area and make sure that
Right,
they're
we
aware,
we
of
can,
course.
we can repeat everything we did, or if the new maps work in our favor, we may have fewer areas of concern than we did last time.
That would be
But
good.
my gut feeling is that certain areas will still be problematic as far as being mapped into the floodplain.
Okay. 'Cause, you know, we have a number of residents that come to coffee with the board, the folks that live in the Congress Street area, and that whole surrounding area. They have big concerns, as does everybody else that are in that.
And that area was
floodplain.
looked at both by the county's consultant and by our consultant. So, and they've done the modeling. And so for us, if they stay in the proposed map floodplain, short of doing our own Sugar Creek map, our own map, which will be about $300,000, I'm not sure if there's anything we can do to get them out of the floodplain.
Yeah, we'll have to continue
Yeah.
exploring that.
I mean, they've identified numerous projects within the floodplain to provide relief to the residents that are flooding. However, this group claims minimal flooding, so you can't design a project to remove somebody in the floodplain if there's no flood damages to remove. That's how the funding formulas work.
We'll wait and see what the new maps say, and then
Yeah.
we'll go from there, yeah.
But of course, we'll continue to make ourselves available to provide elevation certificates, so maybe individual properties can get themselves out of the floodplain,
Okay.
which we've done in the past. And all we can do is wait for the new maps and decide what our next course of action is. In addition, we will continue our cost-sharing program to correct drainage problems on private property. This program's probably been in place over 10 years, and I'd say we probably assisted over 100 residents during that time span. So it's a ongoing program that seems to be working. It doesn't provide flood control. It provides what we call dewatering, but those nuisance areas that don't drain at all, it does provide relief for them. And then finally, the probably, I guess, least popular task we have when it comes to stormwater is the permit review, because it seems, stormwater management is always, we're put in a position between, the developers and the existing residents, because we want to protect the existing residents from further flooding, and obviously we want to be developer friendly. So sometimes we have to be the bad guys when it comes to a sticky situation, when it comes to drainage. Our drainage ordinances are based on the county model, so we all use the same countywide ordinances, and it's meant to protect properties from flooding, simply put. That when you get so much rain, the water has to go somewhere, and it's our duty to make sure it goes somewhere where it causes no harm. And that's what enforcement of the stormwater ordinances is all about, making sure that whatever is done, whenever you regrade or make improvements, that the stormwater is taken care of. So we'll continue to do that to the best of our ability, but it's not the most popular part of our duties, unfortunately. We do have some unfunded drainage projects that were identified in the two flood control studies. These are described in more detail in the other presentations we've been doing at the informational meetings, so I won't spend too much time on these. Just that right now in the capital improvement program, which is a little bit further on, there's over $7.5 million of flood control study projects that are unfunded, and there's additional projects not even in the capital improvement program identified in the flood control studies that are not funded. Another issue that comes up constantly, we've been doing more and more work the last few years with ditch and culvert replacement. We did Van Buren last year. We're hoping to do some things on Harrison this year, but it would be great to come up with a regular ditching program so that we can do it on an ongoing basis and keep, the ditches and the culverts in good working order. that's something that we have not been able to do since I've been here, basically. So that's one potential use of stormwater funds above and beyond the projects that is currently not really funded.
In terms of Rotary Park too, we were talking at one time, maybe making that more of a water retention area, since water collects in that area as well. Have we looked into doing anything more?
Well, that was identified in the flood control study.
Right.
It's not in the capital improvement program, but it's listed with those other projects that are unfunded, stormwater projects outside the capital improvement program. Remember, we focused on the flood control projects that coincided with road referendum projects as the first priority.
Right.
So if the flood control wasn't, a high priority because of other reasons, and it didn't match up with road improvements, then we put that beyond 5 years because we knew we didn't have enough money to do both. So the focus really was on the referendum projects and the associated underground that goes with it.
Are we still able to go after FEMA grants to buy out homes in that area? Because I know we were doing that for a while. Is that still?
Well, there was an
option?
announcement after the 2013 storm, so I don't know if all those funds are committed or not. There has not been another call for projects for quite some time.
Okay.
So typically that's when we know that there's funds available, when they have another call for projects. Now, what may happen is after they get through completing all the current projects and they have money left over, there may be another call at the end, because this grant cycle for the county runs through 2019, I believe. Is that correct? So there's still a possibility.
Okay.
But meeting the criteria, it has proven to be difficult for many communities because you have to prove direct damages from the 2013 storm with actual evidence. We went through that with the Bierman Combined Sewer Separation Project. We almost didn't get funded because we had a hard time finding proof. I mean, this is years later now, they're asking for photographic proof. So if the residents didn't keep their photos or their bills, we had no direct evidence other than our reports, and that wasn't good enough for them. So it's possible, but the further we get away from 2013, the less likely it is to be funded from that event.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just the list of unfunded CIP stormwater projects. This is a portion of the same slide from the informational meetings we've been having. So it's about $7.5 million. And 5 of the 7 of these projects are on referendum-funded streets. So obviously, if we don't secure funding for that, the street improvements will have to go forward without the flood control for stormwater improvements. Any questions on stormwater? Okay, moving on to the water supply fund. The revenue budget does assume an annual general increase on January 1st. That's when our annual rate increases have been taken effect. We did do a series of 5 consecutive rate increases some years ago. So the last one that was by ordinance was this year. So going forward, it would take a new ordinance to approve any future rate increase. So the budget, it's in the proposed budget, but it is contingent, obviously, on a new ordinance. So if there is no rate increase, then we'll have to revise our revenue projections accordingly. We also identified an amount that would be needed for capital funding, i.e. water main replacement and other water-related elements of road projects that we feel is not funded without jeopardizing the fund balance to a level that we think is below what is adequate. Now, this could be part of a rate. It could be part of other funding sources such as a sales tax. We just want to put a number out there to identify what our need is here. Otherwise, we are projecting a positive operating cash flow of over $400,000 and ending up with a 103-day operating balance. But that's assuming that the 2 items at the top take place. If they don't, then obviously it would be a lower operating fund balance. We are proposing new IEPA loan applications. These projects have been under design for well over a year. So if things go right, we would be seeking those loans this fiscal year. We did complete a water audit last year because of our perceived loss of revenue compared to pumpage, and the findings basically told us from a leak standpoint our system's tight. I mean, we should still continue to do the leak surveys, but we need to focus on what they call apparent losses, which are meter inaccuracies, billing issues, and what we call unauthorized use. And we've come across some unauthorized use.
Where we say the positive operating cash flow and the 103-day operating balance, how low would that go if the two top bullet points didn't occur? The 2% general increase in
Well,
the
subtract 293,000, so that gets us down to just over $1 million, and I'd have to calculate what the 2%, right?
Just wondering if we would be able to afford to give the residents a little bit of relief by not
We
hitting
can
them
do
with the
that, but then we
2%.
would not qualify for any IEP8 loans because we would not be able to demonstrate a positive cash flow for the next 5 years. To get any EPA loans, you have to show positive cash flow for the next 5 years. So you have to show a rate increase sometime during that 5 years because there will not be enough revenue to get us through 5 years.
So basically, you just need one rate increase during that 5-year period then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, typically you like to do it in increments. You don't want to do it all at once because it's a much bigger bite. That's why we did, last time we did a 2% annual just to keep up with inflation, and
Yeah.
that was able to provide enough funding to show that we can meet our debt obligations. It's no different than any other debt. You have to show the ability to repay the debt.
Sure.
And one of the things they look for is the positive cash flow.
Okay. Yeah, just if there was a way to kind of look at that in the future, if conditions change or whatever, especially.
Well, like I said, there is a way, but
Right.
the way is likely not to go forward with the water main replacement projects.
Right, we don't.
Or find an alternate funding source.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to put it out there for consideration. Okay, thank you.
Total operating costs for the water fund over 4.6 million. And just to tell you how important it is to watch every drop, 62% of the operating cost of the water fund is just the purchase of water. 2.88 million is just to buy the water that we resell to our customers.
And that's from the city, Chicago?
Well,
From
from
my-
DuPage Water Commission, ultimately from the city of
From the city.
Chicago. That is correct. The rest of the operating funds go for operation and maintenance, and of course, our water loss reduction efforts. We do an annual leak survey. We will be expanding that this year. We are doing ongoing meter testing and replacement, and we are going to be proposing a new meter system, meter reading system, which I'll get into when we talk about the capital expenses. As you can see, we have $3.375 million in capital expenses. That's much more than our operating surplus, so we either have to cut back on this or borrow, and to borrow, we need to show the ability to pay it back. We do have some non-water main related capital items proposed, including the vehicle that we approved a few months ago, which won't be delivered till next year. The meter reading system basically would allow us to take on-demand readings of the entire village every hour. So not only does that help us from a billing standpoint, but it also will help us with better analytics. So if somebody is tampering or if somebody needs an instant read because of some problem, we can do that. And then all that data would be accumulated. It would be taken from a single point, hopefully. Right now, we manually drive up and down. Our telephone system, which was about 20 years old, we discontinued using that I think about 2 years ago. And not because of failures, even though that was part of it. The main reason is a lot of people don't have landlines anymore, so
Yeah.
you don't have a phone to connect to. So we had too high of a manual read rate, so we're converting to all radio. So the next step would be to look at converting to fixed point radio.
Okay. Is there an opportunity for residents, if they wanted to have a device or something installed on their water meter that could read to the drop instead of to every 1,000 gallon?
The new meters all read to a gallon.
So exactly to the drop, because we get a lot of questions from residents about how the meters are read. You know, I don't know if we want to get into that
Yeah,
really
no,
quick
all the
about
new,
that.
all the
but
new water
while
meters
we're
we're
talking about
installing
this.
are capable of being read to the gallon.
To the gallon, okay. Okay,
Now, having the software to process it to the gallon is the other part. That's one of the reasons why we're looking at these, the new reading system to take advantage of all the features of the, one of the features, it's an option, is where the residents can go in and look at their own usage, just like
Okay.
you can with your ComEd bill.
okay.
That would be one of the features that would be enabled if we went over to this new system.
Yeah, that could be helpful.
So you
Sure,
had
go
a
ahead.
question, too?
Yeah,
Yes,
actually, that's the question I was going to ask, because a lot of people say, you know what, every month I get a bill, it's 2,000 gallons or 3,000.
Right.
It's never 2,360 gallons, and,
That's because we bill per 1,000 gallons.
yeah, and
We round on our bills.
can we change that with the system we have?
Not with our current system, I don't believe.
Yes. Kevin Wachtel, our finance director, is coming to the podium to explain this. Thank you, because we get a lot of questions about that.
When we do have an interaction with somebody, when there is a question on their water bill or their meter, then if you do replace it, we do replace it with the meters that read per gallon. And once they're on that meter and we get that information, those reads, then we do bill on a more precise increment. So it would be on a per gallon basis. But our rates are set per 1,000, so there is some proration, but that's only once they have the new meter installed.
How many do we have installed so far in the village? Do you know, offhand?
It's about a third of all of our meters, or
No, the actual meters, I believe, is about 800. So it's maybe a tenth.
10%?
Wow.
More than 10%.
Okay, good, thank you.
That would be a multi-year project to replace all the meters.
Sure.
So when would all the new meters be rolled up, by 2020, did you say?
Well, we don't have the funding
Okay.
in the water fund to replace them all at once. So this will be either a pay-as-you-go, or we could try and qualify for a loan, but then we're back in the same trick bag of showing the ability to pay back the loan. So right now, as we get any calls, or if we have to go inside anybody's home for any reason whatsoever to look at their meter, or we're putting in a new one. So we're budgeting $60,000 right now annually for meter replacement, and just over time we'll get to all of them. We wanted to start with the large meters because those are the biggest revenue impact, but we are doing residential meters on an ongoing basis.
How much does it cost per meter? What's the cost on that?
I'll have to get back to you. I know it's over $100,
Okay, we've got 60,000.
and it depends on the size.
Okay, and 60,000 budgeted, okay.
Let's make a note of that, please. Any other questions?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to water main replacement. We do have, as I mentioned, the College Streets water main project, which has been under design for well over a year. So if the cash flow issue can be worked out, then we can submit for a low-interest EPA loan for that project. Right now, the interest rates are about 2%, so it's a very attractive program. The only downside is you still have to pay the money back. Ridge Road Community Development Block Grant Project, we heard that this funding source may be in jeopardy, but the village manager placed a call yesterday, and based on what we heard, we're going to continue with the design. And I don't know if he wants to go into details on that or not.
Not really.
So basically, we're okay right now.
Right now, they told us that they think the block grant program will continue.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And of course, our other capital expenses are related to road projects. Whenever we go and reconstruct the road, there's hydrants, there's valves, other street improvements. There's 3 projects in particular, but one item I do need to mention, because it could be a big issue going forward, is the issue with lead. As you may or may not know, there was new legislation passed that requires all municipalities to take an inventory of all the lead in their system. Now, our water mains do not have lead. That's not the issue. The issue is the services. Especially in our older areas of the village, we do have lead, and we've been replacing it as we encounter it for the last 10 years. Now, the question is, once we have this inventory, how much time are they going to give us to do something about the lead. Are we going to be mandated to replace them all within a time frame? Then we're going to be back here talking about how do we raise the money to replace the lead. Because then it'll be a mandate and we'll have no choice. So right now, we only replace when we encounter. So on a reconstruct project, when we're putting in a new storm sewer, if we encounter lead, we replace that service up to the B box. Homeowner's portion is still there, so that's another issue. If we're doing water main replacement, then we automatically replace all the services, and then the lead's not an issue. So not sure where this is going, but it's just something that we all need to keep in mind and watch to see if there's going to be more mandates coming down on this. The wastewater fund. Again, we are assuming from a revenue standpoint 2% general increase just to keep up with operating cost increases. We do have a new combined sewer separation component that raises about $288,000 annually. Sewer revenue is also based on water consumption, so whatever improvements we do to metering and reading also benefit the wastewater fund, and they also benefit the Salt Creek Sanitary District equally. So there is a shared benefit to any of our water loss efforts. Again, there will be a capital need for the wastewater fund. We did not put in a number in this case because we thought it was premature. We do have a positive operating cash flow. We're looking at of over $500,000, and we're looking at 159 days operating balance. So from a fund balance standpoint, wastewater fund has more days in reserve than the water fund, and so that's why we're not proposing a capital source at this point. But again, we do have 2 IEPA loan funded projects or programs. Combined sewer separation is a whole series of projects, but we also have some sewer rehabilitation projects that were identified in our master plan. So there's 2 components of that, one of which we are currently under design and wanting to get out to bid this year. And we think that the cash flow, we're hoping the cash flow calcs for the wastewater fund will be good enough that we can get the loan with little or no increases, other than possibly just a 2% general increase that we're proposing in the budget. Operating expenses include maintenance of the sewer collection system, operation of the wet weather flow treatment facility. We have 3 current EPA loans we're repaying, and then implementation of 2 IEPA mandates. We spent what I would call a considerable amount of money to develop a long-term control plan and an operation and maintenance plan. Those were submitted to the EPA, I want to say 8 months ago, and they were supposed to get back to us with comments a month later. We still haven't heard anything, so we're going to go ahead and implement these plans as if they were approved next year. Right? They're good plans, and eventually I guess they'll get around to giving us comments on them. But in the meantime, we spent the money on these plans, so we're going to implement them. Capital expenditures, wet weather flow treatment facility, it cost us $10 million to build it back in '86, so there's components that wear out on an ongoing basis, so we're always replacing something in there. We're going to continue with our sewer reimbursement program. That's $1,000 for sewer repairs or certain I&I corrective work. We pretty much spend that amount every year, and it's a popular program. We're going to continue that. Point repairs to the sewer in conjunction with road projects. The other half of the vehicle that we approved a few months ago was in the wastewater fund, and of course, half of the meter reading system. As I said, because the wastewater fund benefits from increased revenue due to meter reading, we are budgeting a portion of that in the wastewater fund, and I think we're also going to approach the Salt Creek Sanitary District and cost sharing on that item as well, since they will also benefit.
Those conversations have been had before, have they not?
They've been had in general, not specifically about that project. I mean, what the conversations have been is that we've been providing our meter readings to them at no charge. So they have not paid anything of the cost to operate and maintain the meter reading and billing system. So And they understand that in the future that may no longer be the case. And again, a lot of our capital projects out of the wastewater fund are related to the road projects. Same projects that are in the budget in the road fund will also have wastewater components. And then we have $1.2 million in sewer rehabilitation that we're proposing to fund through low-interest EPA loans. Combined sewer separation, Michigan from Park to Madison. As I said, that project is getting ready to start. As you may recall, before we went out to bids for this and for the Park Boulevard project, we said we were going to loan $1 million from other funds to get these projects going for the storm sewer separation. So that's still the case. I mean, we're funding the money, but over time, the new combined sewer separation revenues will have to pay this back, which means they can't be committed to other projects unless we defer those repayments. North Bierman, Grant will pay 75% of that, so we're budgeting the 25%. Astor Court Myrtle, which will be ready for bidding later this year, will require an EPA loan. Michigan from Kenilworth to Central, we still need to start design of that project, and because of all the uncertainty with the funding for underground infrastructure, we're going to wait until after May 1, I think, to present that design contract so that we know what the funding sources are and how we're going to approach funding of the sewer separation on that one. And then, of course, we have a list of unfunded sewer separation projects in the capital improvement program. And this is a list, $18 million of unfunded combined sewer separation projects, which has already been discussed at the informational meetings. That's it for the capital funds. Before I move on to the capital improvement program, which is only a few slides, are there any questions on water or wastewater?
I think we are
Nope.
good. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yes.
The CIP is a fairly lengthy document, so rather than going through all of it, I'll just try and summarize what's in there. So what we did is we broke it down by types of projects, how many of them are funded, how many of them are unfunded, and the total cost. So total CIP is over $84 million, and that's probably a 7-year time frame for all of them. There's 57 total projects, of which 23 are funded. So less than half of them are currently funded. As you can see, all the street projects are funded. Equipment replacement funded. Stormwater, less than half. Water supply, almost none, because they all involve EPA loans, and we don't have the cash flow currently to meet those obligations. Wastewater, even though it says none, we think we'll be okay with borrowing the money from the EPA loan fund without substantial changes. So that one may not truly be zero. And sewer separation, as you can see, only 4 of the 20 proposed sewer separation projects are currently funded. And that's why we're having the informational meetings, basically, is to see, to get the word out on what's unfunded.
The $84 million is a staggering number.
It's a planning number. I
Right.
mean,
It's still
I'd be
planning or not,
very
it's-
happy if we achieved that. I'd be very busy, but very happy. But we know not all of this is going to get done over the
Right.
7-year time frame.
Right.
So, but we have to present the needs so that everybody knows this is the needs as identified from our various studies. These are not numbers we made up. These are all rooted in some type of master plan or master study that's been conducted by outside consultants.
Right, that have been presented here.
That have been presented to the
several
village
times
board,
over the
yes.
last few years.
Looking at the numbers a different way, and I won't go through this too much, but this is just a breakdown by the proposed funding source. So note sewer separation over 20 million, stormwater over 14 million, water loans almost 11 million. So those are your 3 major unfunded components on this list. Everything else we're pretty confident is a funded component. And this is just a copy of the map that's on display here, showing a map of all the entire proposed capital improvement program.
Thank you.
And that's it, unless there's any questions. I know it's a lot of material. I know it took us a long time to put it together, so I know it would take a long time to read it, but if there's any questions anytime, please feel free to contact us, because it can be daunting to understand the numbers and what they mean and how they interrelate with each other.
Not sure, anybody else have any questions? Quite a bit, okay. If we think of anything, I know we can ask during our next board meeting. Or
Absolutely.
get a hold of the manager. Okay, then we are then, at the next item on the agenda, public comment on all that we've discussed. And we do have one person in the audience with us here that is from the community. So if there's any questions, public comment, now's your chance. Otherwise, we're going to adjourn. And seeing none then, we will adjourn. So we'll do a roll call vote for adjournment. Or we have to do a motion? We don't have to do a motion, I don't think.
Madam President,
We'll do it
I'd
anyway.
like to move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, we'll do all in favor. Aye. Okay, thank you. We are adjourned from this budget workshop. Yes, thank you, Vydas, for all of this information. Thanks, Phillip Park. Our next board meeting, by the way, is on Monday, March 27th, 2017, here at Village Hall, 7:30. See you then.